right, is this working? Yes, it is working. I think I can see it working. So I'm just testing out a new system here. Hopefully I'm not too frozen. Welcome everyone. Testing out a new system. So if you just jumped on, let me know if you can hear me okay. Is the volume high enough? I might turn it up a little bit more because I think it's a bit low. If this is too loud, let me know. You can hear me okay. So what we're going to do is do some Q&A in my clinic today, so I'm not going to be able to talk too bombastically because there's other people in different rooms around me. And so hopefully you can hear me at this level, otherwise I'll turn the volume up. So just let me know in the comments if you can hear me. And this is where you can ask questions. It's going to be a Q&A. I'm going to answer some questions that people have already asked on the channel, and we'll just get into it. So you feel free to ask your questions. I've joined Twitch as well, so you can follow me on Twitch, Chinese Medicine Podcast. And what I'll end up doing is I'll work out a couple of times a week and I'll do these lives on here and Twitch at the same time, and we'll see if there's any people on there that are interested in this. Great. So let's just I'm going to my comments to answer some of these questions. So Max said, can I do a video on liver yang rising? Yes, I will be doing that. If anyone's watching this and you are interested in that, and I don't get that video out quick enough, it's very similar to liver qi stagnation, except that then you've got this component of a lot more heat in the picture. And so one way I always think about liver yang rising is the little cartoon man with the steam coming out of his ears, like so I do hope you can hear me, please. I can see that there's a couple of viewers there. Could you let me know in the comments if you can't hear me, or you can just give a thumbs up, that'd be great. Since this is all a new system, I've just set up this Mac Mini at my office. This is my office in the background here, and I've got this new little Rode mic, which I've used before. Yep, just checking. Normally I talk too loudly and it's bombastically loud and might be burning your ears or something. So yeah, we've got a few questions here. Okay, let me just scroll through some of these. Let's have a look. Oh, that was a very interesting question. Someone asked me if I eat the actual spleen organ. This was on a video about spleen qi. If I eat the actual spleen organ itself in a supplement form, like our ancestors used to do with other organs, would that benefit the spleen qi deficiency in the same way that eating TCM herbs would? So in one sense, yes. In Chinese diet therapy, a big part of that is eating, like this idea that the organs nourishes those organs. So heart nourishes your heart. Technically, spleen would nourish your spleen, but the spleen isn't really used much as an organ to eat. Like it is, I guess, part of offal, and maybe these kind of organs will have a resurgence and a comeback, because like I've watched some videos, documentary type of things where they've talked about, food wastage and how, people are just so picky about certain parts of meat. They don't eat all these other parts and they get wasted, and and then you have a resurgence of something like beef cheeks, right? I don't know if that's a big thing in your part of the woods where you're from, but beef cheeks is like, never used to be on the menu, and now it's like a popular thing. So one thing to think about with offal, which is the organs, right, which you never had to think about when these concepts were maybe even up to 50 or 60 years ago, is the hormones and all the production that's happened to meats, and anything toxic in that's happened to that animal, like because of the foods they've eaten, because of pesticides in the environment, and that's affecting their food or things like that, then technically that is going to absorb into those organs more than in the other parts of the meat, because those are the organs that are doing the filtration. Like, let's say your kidneys, those are the organs that are doing those jobs. So I think I'm sort of a little bit wary about having that for those foods if they're not from a good source. Like I mean, it's hard to buy these things. You can't really buy heart. I've seen heart in a supermarket, but you can't really buy these organs because there's just not a big market for them. But it is a part of Chinese medicine for sure. So like if a person's got a blood deficiency, meat is a big tonifier of blood. And so technically like liver would be the best thing to have for that blood deficiency. And that can be a concurrent thing with spleen qi deficiency. So this person's question was asking about, you know, for spleen qi deficiency specifically. But you're probably really aware that like with some conditions, like, or let's say diagnoses in Chinese medicine, they don't just happen one by itself. It happens concurrently with other things, and that's why it can be really common to get misdiagnosed by Chinese, or not misdiagnosed, but get different diagnoses. I wouldn't say misdiagnosed because some are focusing on one and not the other part of it. So welcome people who are watching. Thanks guys for tuning in. If you've got a question, pop it in the comments. I'll try to answer it. This is not going to be a long live stream. I just wanted to test the quality, to be honest, of what I could do given this setup. So this is in my office, and sometimes I have a little bit of a gap between patients or something like that, and I think, oh, I could be doing something like this now, and I might just be in the mood to answer people's questions or talk about things like I am now. So I hope you're doing well, and if you've got a particular question, you can ask it. But I'm just going through people's questions from the comments. So we were just talking about, you know, would the spleen organ itself supplement the spleen qi? I don't think it'd be any more beneficial than just a general healthy diet. Like it's not like unfortunately there's not like one food that's like, oh, if you just had this one food, all your problems would go away, or it would fix everything. You know, the more and more I practice Chinese medicine, the more I realize like how these things are like pieces of a puzzle that all fit together. So, you know, Chinese diet therapy, which is the use of foods for maintaining health and treating illness, let's say, or it's more of a prevention. Like there's a lot of textbooks that say it's for treating things, but can it really treat something that's been, you know, established? Like probably not. It's very hard to fix it. Like that's why if you try diet therapy by itself, it's just such a slow process. But I have seen patients, and probably more people since I've been working on this channel with people like that are much more interested and committed. I would say committed is the big word here, to their health. Then like you can see results just from diet. I've had a few patients that have just used diet, and they have very, very sporadically used acupuncture and herbs. Like they'd come in for a consultation, they've had acupuncture and herbs, or even just acupuncture, and then they've gone away with these things and they've come back and, you know, they've had these results. So it is possible to do that, but it's such a long-term approach that you don't sort of go, you don't wake up, you know, and sort of eat a particular food or change your diet most of the time and notice these dramatic results. You can do for things that are acute problems, like things that have just happened. You can notice better results from changing diet or foods in that way, but sometimes some symptoms can just take a long time to fix up. So please let me know if I'm loud enough or too soft enough or loud enough. I'm not even sure whether this chat's working, so if someone wants to pop something in there, that'd be great. Just put a smiley face. Don't be shy. And let me know that you can hear me. And if you've got a question, you can put that in there. Yeah, just scrolling through some of these comments to see what we can answer. Someone asked me just recently about, that's why I can't see them because I was on the wrong part, about dry heat versus damp heat. Yes, that's true. There is a condition, or there is a diagnosis called dryness. Let me see if I just get on this other side of the other side of YouTube. See if I can find my own channel. Well, do I pop up to myself? Yes, there we go. I do pop up to myself. Great. Awesome. Okay, so it's working. That part's working. Yeah, so dryness is probably just not as commonly diagnosed, I think, as dampness. People get a lot of, like, dampness is a common thing, and that's one of the reasons why I made so many videos on it, because people just had so many questions. Oh, what does it really mean? But dryness could be thought of like as a lack of moisture. So in one way, dampness is too much moisture, but dryness is like a lack of moisture. Like there just isn't enough moisture. Now there's not enough of your body's own moisture to moisten whatever's needs to be moistened. So that in that case, when someone has dryness as a condition, then their skin might be dry, their tissues might be dry, people can have like vaginal dryness or dryness in areas where there should be like Sjogren's disease is a condition where there's sometimes dryness because there's like lack of saliva to moisten the mouth. Does water drinking fix it? No, because it's not a matter of it's not dehydration that's the problem. It's not like you've just got a lack of water, but it's a lack of your body to be able to produce the moisture. Now, if you don't drink enough water or you don't drink any water or enough water, you will get dryness, and you could fix that with drinking. But a lot of these people with these kinds of dryness conditions they're drinking enough water. That's not the issue. They've already tried that, and I'm not suggesting don't try that, but it's not just a matter, like when you drink water, it doesn't just moisten things. Your body has to go through a process of making that, like transforming that water into the fluids that is needed. And you have different kinds of fluids in Chinese medicine. You have what they call thin liquids and thick liquids, or thin like mucus and thicker kind of things that are meant to moisten and lubricate, right up to the point where bones are part of that, like they're just a dense form of that moisture, right? So bones aren't dry, and because they would be dry and brittle like an old bone, but bones have some kind of moisture in them. So yeah, I think these live streams will be a bit more of an educational thing. I'm sorry about the quality of the video. I know it's not my normal quality. Wasn't sure what it would come out like today because I'm using my iPhone, which is the latest iPhone, but hopefully, I don't know, I think it's got to do with the quality of the internet. Could make a difference to it too. So to answer your question, yes, there is such a thing as dry heat, or particularly dryness. And but when you said your symptoms, or the symptoms you've mentioned, constipation, but smelly bowel movements, I thought you said small. So yeah, when you have heat, it tends to cause a smell because it's concentrating whatever's there. And so the difference in the damp heat would be like not so necessarily a liquid, but a more liquidy kind of situation versus a person who's got dry and hard to get out. And it might seem like, because what's happening is the stool itself is becoming really concentrated, and that's what's causing the smell. Like, so bowel movements smell, but if you had more of it and it was condensed into it, it might be really hard sort of pushing or something like that to get it out. That could be like a kind of in TCM they would just call it heat. They wouldn't call that dry heat. But as opposed to damp heat, yeah, you could think of it as dry heat. But there is dryness. So dryness is simply just a lack of moisture. And often dryness is related to blood deficiency, because blood is the substance that's moistening most of the body in a way. So you've got fluids that are moistening you, but if a person can't produce that moisture, there's often a blood deficiency component there too. And this is where a practitioner is going to be useful to give you the diagnosis based on what's happening with your pulse and what's happening with your tongue, or your the other things that they're kind of looking at. So please feel free to pop a comment in the comments if you're watching this afterwards, after the fact. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your for people's. Oh, this is a great question. I'm going to answer this one too. Will cooling foods help decrease hot flushes in menopause? So I'll probably do a video on this, a dedicated video. because sometimes I tend to ramble on in these things, as you can tell, unedited. Oh, I just noticed there's like some kind of weird square going on here in this video. Not sure what that is. Some kind of a, it's like I've been gridded out. I don't know how to get that off or on. Sorry about that. It's like a line across my face. We'll carry on. This is probably what happens when you use your iPhone to make videos. It's not sort of for its intended purpose. Right, so someone asked about menopausal hot flushes. Can eating cold foods or cooler foods help that? Look, it makes sense to kind of think like that. But one thing that, like, you probably heard me bang on about classical Chinese medicine versus TCM. And that's where it would become a big difference, right? Because in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, there's this idea of heat, where in classical Chinese medicine, they still see those symptoms, those heaty kind of symptoms, but we wouldn't think of it as heat. So therefore, the way we're treating it is different. It's your own body's yang, those heat symptoms. So therefore, no, you can't just eat cooling. You can't just eat cooling foods to cool that kind of heat. Now, if you had excess heat, like there is a condition called summer heat, which is like very similar to when you get sunburned. You go out in the sun, you've had too much hot weather on you, and your skin dries out because you've gotten burned or something like that. That kind of heat can definitely cause. Oh, hi! Someone's put in the comments. Yay, the comments are working. Can you hear me? Okay, is it all good? Javi. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that right. Johnson is your surname. I'll just call you Johnson. I'll just say that. But welcome. Thank you. Hello. Feel free to put a comment. Feel free to put a question if you have a question. So with menopausal heat, the symptoms are heat. Like the person feels heat. They feel a hot flush. They feel hot. They feel sweaty. They get night sweats. Their skin gets really dry. And you could think of that, well, the heat must be drying out the skin. The heat must be drying the fluids. But what is that heat? They haven't been exposed to the hot environment. You don't just wake up at 50 and go, oh, the environment's making me hot. It's not that. It's your own body. So it's your own body's hormonal changes. But in Chinese medicine, we think of that as, well, one is you're aging, you have a decline of yang. That's what aging is. And your body can't hold on to that yang anymore. And so what happens is it floats up or it flushes up, and that's what causes people to get this, what they call a hot flash. If you're in the US, they'd call it a hot flash. In Australia, we call it hot flush. I think the UK hot flushes as well. And so this feeling of heat, you might feel relieved by eating a cucumber or eating some cooling foods, having some lettuce, but it's not really going to solve the problem. It's not a solution to it's not going to get to the cause of the problem, right? So what's the cause of the problem? The cause is the body can't hold that yang in its place, and so it's rushing up very easily. And so that's where actually with Chinese herbal medicine, often, and this can freak a lot of people out, we would use warmer herbs. So what we're doing is we're using warm herbs that kind of get that yang and push it down, or keep it in its place so that it doesn't go out. That's the best way to kind of describe it. So yang tonic herbs in classical Chinese medicine tend to be hotter herbs, warmer herbs. And they're very specific about where they're keeping that warmness. They're not warming you as in they're warming the exterior of your body, because that's a pungent flavour that kind of does that. So like something that makes you sweat makes you feel warmer because you're sweating, right? So when you get sick with a cold or a flu, you're using ginger, like fresh ginger, and you're using cinnamon, and you might use other herbs that make your body sweat, and you will feel warm because you feel like, oh, I feel warm, and then you sweat, and then your body cools off a little bit when that happens too. And so with Chinese herbal medicine, in treating those kinds of things, very specific about how much time we give those herbs for, mixing them with other things in the formula so that that person's not having a detrimental effect from sweating too much, right? But in a menopausal situation, you don't want to give people warm herbs to make them feel warmer. You're giving them warm herbs to actually help get that heat. It's like sucking it back down into the place where it's meant to be. So that's kind of what it's doing. And you sometimes see with menopausal cases, yin tonics being used a lot. Now this is the TCM approach. And so you might, if you followed that with foods, it's like you just feel gluggy and full, like you wouldn't, like yin tonic foods are rich, dense foods. And some of those can be cooling, like let's say yogurt would be one of those foods. But it might make the person feel better temporarily, but it's not going to fix the problem. As in a general sense, for every kind of condition, every kind of person, you want to stick to the basics of healthy diet. So you don't want to exclude certain groups of foods if you can help it, because it's good to have a variety of foods, right? You don't want to eat too much of one particular food, because then you could have a detriment, because everything in moderation, right? That kind of thing. So you generally want a clear, bland diet if you're very unwell, and that's what you would go back to as a way to keep healthy or stay healthy. Thanks everyone for jumping on the stream, joining in. Let me know if the audio's right, because I can't hear it back. I'm just winging it. If it's too loud or too soft, tell me. Just pouring a little afternoon coffee here. So all good. Yep. So that kind of, hopefully that answers that question for you about those foods, cooling foods. So yes, it's good to have cooling foods, particularly summertime, springtime. Not too many of those foods in general. You want to stick to mostly cooked foods. And so if you cook a cooling food, it's still cooling inside, like it still has a cooling nature to it, but you just lessen the harshness of that cooling nature. So in general, to stay healthy, you want to eat mostly cooked foods most of the time, mostly warm foods even, let's say, most of the time. Warm, cooked and moist rather than cold, dry and raw. So in a general sense, if your body's going through menopause, it's in a state of decline just because of the age of your person, and you're trying to stop that decline from rapidly, going too quickly or causing you any detriment. Because it's possible to go through menopause with no symptoms. Like, it's not necessary that you have to have all these symptoms happening. So how would you do that? You're basically avoiding to waste yang. So why would you have a lot of cold foods? Because that would take up a lot of yang or a lot of qi to digest the foods. So that's the general principle. And I know it's a bit confusing, because even when I've taught TCM diet therapy, that's what they say. They kind of have this idea, oh, you've got heat, eat cooling foods. But it comes back to that idea of, well, where did that heat come from? Yeah, if it's external heat, like I said, the person who's had the sunburn or the sunstroke or something like that, yeah, watermelon and cooling foods and these kind of things are good for that, but not for something where the heat is from an underlying deficiency. Yep. All right. So we might do maybe one more. If anyone's got a question they'd like to ask it, speak now or forever hold your peace. Wait till next time. I'll try to do some of these streams late at night, because I know most of my viewers are in the US, and it's probably about 3 a.m. there. So I hope you're not on the stream now, because I hope you're sleeping soundly. Yeah, wow, I saw what happened in Texas, like far out, that ice, the truck hitting all those, the truck pile-ups, and the people that passed away from that, like, and the 100 people injured, mate. It's so sad. If you're there, or my heart goes out to you. It's like, wow. I watched a video of someone that filmed something on their phone, and it was like really crazy, like just 3 or 4 trucks just slamming into each other. Yep. Okay, so just have a quick look through some of the comments, if there's anything I've missed. Oh, how does one make congee in a crock pot? That was a question, right? Megan, thank you for this. She says, I've been on the budget diet. I'm a second semester acupuncture student. Well, we've all been there. Or maybe not all of us, but a lot of us have been students. I've been student many times. Look, cooking with a crock pot is one of the easiest, best ways to cook. It's very cheap to cook, especially if you are if you've got more than a few people in the house, because you tend to make a lot of food out of it. And so you can either use the crock pot to cook and then freeze it. When I was studying Chinese medicine, I was just learning about congee, and that's when I started doing this sort of stuff. So basically congee is 6 to 7 times water. So if you're using a cup measurement, 6 cups of water to 1 cup of grain. Now, the best way to start is rice. And when you use a crock pot, you just put it all in and press on. It's not hard. You put it on low if you are going to cook it overnight, and you've got, let's say, 8 hours or more than that till when you want the food to be ready. If you're in a bit of a hurry, I would tend to, like if you want it to be ready in, let's say, 4 hours or 5 hours, that's a hurry for crockpot world, then you can put it on high. Now, let's say you sort of, sometimes with congees, let's say you're going to get up, I don't know, 7 a.m, or you want to eat that food at 7 a.m, and you're going to go to bed 11 or 12 or something like that, then you can make it ready to go almost, like have your stuff there, and then just turn it on at that time. So you can let it soak before you even turn it on if you want to. No, it's not very hard. So that's the basic recipe right now. That's very boring, just plain rice. No one's going to eat just that all the time. So what you can do is, what crock pots are great for is to use up the meat that's been in the freezer. I will answer your question in a sec. Awesome banana shout. I thought I said banana shout out. So yeah, crock pots are just easy. You can easily cook with them, and it's because it's economical. Like you can usually buy them in a supermarket for like $20 or $30, especially in winter time. If you're in Australia, Kmart have them. Coles sometimes have them. That kind of stuff. I cook a lot of meat in a slow cooker, or I keep saying crock pot because that's its like generic name, but it's like a slow cooker. So what I'll do with my meat is I'll just get a big piece of meat, like a piece of roast meat, big piece of beef or pork or whatever, coat it in the herbs and spices. So basically just a mixture of herbs that I make up that are ground down, really yummy stuff. Just a mixture of stuff, like a little bit of salt and pepper, but mostly things like a little bit of paprika, oregano, maybe cumin, or just different kinds of spices that you like. If you have a particular mix that you already know of, you can basically pat all that mixture onto it, and then just put it in the slow cooker, no water, and it just cooks a roast beef or a roast whatever. It's so delicious. Right, I have a question about classical Chinese medicine. Where did you learn it? Where did you study, and how to practice it? Is it self-learning or through specific courses? So yeah, look, if you've already studied normal Chinese medicine, it is included in it a little bit, but not really. And when I first studied Chinese medicine, like the first 1 or 2, the basic principles, like let's say foundations of Chinese medicine, that's what I thought we were learning. Like it is what we were learning. But then when you get out of school, you realise, hang on, what I'm actually practicing isn't all based on this, and there's some of these kind of discrepancies. So technically what classical Chinese medicine is it's the study of the Han Dynasty medicine, let's say. So it's the study of the Neijing, it's the study of the Shanghanlun, the Jingwei. So those 2 books were written by Zhang Zhongjing. And that's more herbal medicine, although there is some acupuncture in there. So it depends on whether you want to be a herbalist or you want to be an acupuncturist. So maybe you can put that, what you're interested in there, but I'll tell you about both of them. So there's a couple of courses that you can do, and some of it's maybe self-learning as well as getting interested in different courses. So like part of learning Chinese medicine is finding a teacher and following them, basically. So you won't know if you want to follow them until you kind of listen to what they're saying. You think, yeah, this is resonating with me, this person can... Like with my teacher, I studied with Arno Versluis, and he has So I'll tell you what his course is like and what that style is like. Now, I can't comment on other styles because I haven't trained with those other people. Okay, cool, herbalism. But there might be some people here watching for acupuncture. So there is an institute called the Nanjing Institute, and that's David White runs that. And I've started studying some of his stuff because he's got quite a lot of stuff online. And it's still the same understandings of Chinese medicine, it's still the same understandings of what is qi or blood or these things, whether it's herbs or acupuncture. But when it comes down to the treatment of things, then it's really about how am I applying these points, how am I applying these herbs or these formulas. So the course I did was, you can go online and have a look at ICEAM. Sounds like ice cream, but it's not. Institute of Classics in East Asian Medicine.org. So it's ICEAM.org. And Arno doesn't have a lot of stuff available online for free that you can kind of check out. He does have a little bit. So if you go on YouTube, he does have a YouTube channel. He's not like he's not making any he's not making YouTube videos or anything like this, but he's got a little bit of snippets on there, and you can kind of get an idea. And if you're in the US or the UK, Australia, then there's pathways to kind of study that course, and he does it. Almost all of it's online except for the pulse diagnosis part of it. But what makes this course different, or the course I studied, that's the ICAM course, different to other styles, is it's very heavily based on pulse diagnosis. So what it is on one hand, you're learning what's the ideas and the concepts of classical Chinese medicine. For most students, they've already studied TCM. They've been practicing for, some of the people that were in my class were practicing 30, 40 years already before they studied this system too. So I'd already been practicing like 17 years before I started doing this. So it's a series of classes and online trainings, I guess, as well. Like I did all mine in person. I went to Sydney. I live in Perth, so I went to Sydney 3 times a year for 3 years. Did sort of a week, like 4 days each time of lessons, like sitting in a classroom for 8 hours. And then there's a lot of learning. And so then you're starting to practice on your own patients, using those formulas and things like that. Once you feel confident with kind of using that, you're starting to integrate that. And that's then how you learn. So if you're already, so when you say, is it self-learning? Yes, there is some self-learning, but I would highly recommend, if you want to do classical Chinese medicine, that you get a good teacher and you do a proper course. And it's not cheap, but it's worth it, like, because it's a good investment in your knowledge. Now, the other part of Arno's training is that he has these pulse diagnosis clinics. So it's a bit hard now because of the old COVID. We can't travel. I can't even go out of WA now. So mental here. So people can't travel internationally, but hopefully that'll change at the end of this year, I would hope, or soon. So what he would do is people would come from, either he will come over here to Australia, or in the UK, there's a guy that comes over, Laurie comes over, or other people, those guys travel to different places around the world, and they run these clinics where if you're a student of that system, you basically can go and your teacher will check the pulse and do the case, and then you get to check at the pulse and do the case, and you've heard the case and that kind of thing. So you're kind of improving your pulse diagnosis knowledge. That's what that training is about. There's a few other people doing different classical Chinese medicine courses. I'm just going to Google this because I forget his name. I'll know it when I see it. I don't know if I'd recommend any other classical Chinese medicine herbs, just because I've had such good results myself doing Arno's course. The only thing that's a bit of a bummer is because of the pulse stuff, it's hard to do in person. I know in the US a lot of in-person stuff has just been shut down. So I don't know if he's running any in-person things this year or not, but he wants to. Like, it's not like he doesn't want to. It's just, you know, trying to do the get through the virus stuff. Oh, something's in my coffee. One of those little, you know, when that skin gets in there from the milky skin. So you've written here, thank you. While you searched, did you have a chance to read the classical of Liu Li Hong? I've seen that. Did I read it? I can't remember. Let's have a quick look. No, I haven't read this. Just having a look. Oh, it's a Shanghan Lun book. I think I've used this before as a reference for something. Because I recognise that name. Oh, it's Heiner's and Sabine Williams. Oh, yep. So they're all good people. Not that the other people aren't good people. I will endeavour to read it and let you know. No, I haven't read it. So the way my system works is not that we don't read other books, but if you do this system, you don't need to go and read a lot of other commentaries and things like that on things, because sometimes that can be more confusing. There's so much training in the stuff that I've done in 3 years, which I finished that, well, this will be the second year after I finished it, that there's still so much more, like there's still so much to learn, and there's a lot of memorization. So for me as a studying tool, what I'm better off doing is, rather than reading all different kinds of books on, or what do these people think about that, it's my teacher recommends better to stick with what you know in terms of like really understand that and really like fully digest that, become good at that. Not at that level yet in doing it, to kind of expand into reading other people's ideas on things, because that can sometimes confuse you more. So that's one of the reasons why I've stopped reading a variety of textbooks on different topics like that. I still read textbooks and stuff, and I still have so many books. I've got more books than I've actually read the books. Yeah, but there's a lot of memorization needed in classical Chinese medicine. And I think as a young person studying it, like it might be challenging for students now, because you're just not in, it's just not a part of life to memorize stuff, because everything's kind of at the Google fingertips. So why would you need to memorize things? You just don't need to. So your brain isn't trained in that way as well. But in what makes you good as a herbalist is what you need to do is be able to feel a pulse, and you'll be able to check. By feeling the pulse, you'll have an idea of what style of herbs are needed, like what, let's say, a formula family. So whether you need herbs that are based around guaja, or based around bai shao, or based around chai hu, or something like that. And so then if you don't know what formulas contain chai hu, you're kind of like, you'd be there for ages trying to prescribe the formula to the patient. You'd need to send them home and then think of something. You wouldn't be able to think of it off the top of your head, because then you're kind of bringing to mind all the formulas that contain chai hu, and then you're thinking, what's the difference in those different formulas symptom-wise? And then you're needing to ask the patient, okay, so do you have, like, well, how's your urination? Like, do you have issues with urination, or how did you get this condition? Like, you might need to ask them some questions about their history, like, have you had this 10 days or 5 days, or, months or years or whatever. And sometimes they would have said that even before you've checked the pulse. But what I'm getting at is, if you don't have the memorization of, one, what the herbs are in the formulas, and then secondly, what those formulas are mainly doing, which comes from memorizing the lines of the Shanghan Lun mostly, or the Jingui, depending on which style type of conditions you're treating. If you're doing classical Shanghan Lun medicine, that's kind of how it works. who was I thinking of? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, because yeah, so the question you were asking about that book. So how my teacher made up his course, or didn't make it up, but how he developed his course, is through like he was trained by, you know, like what's called a lineage style of Chinese medicine. So one teacher trained one or two students, and then they trained a few students. And so instead of him choosing to train 2 or 3 students, he's decided to train literally hundreds of students, which is kind of a deviation from a standard lineage thing. But rather than sort of write a book about it or something like that, he's like, okay, I'm going to make this course and make sure that these students kind of, well, I think that's his intention, to kind of hopefully that they understand and go out in the world and practice it properly. Can't guarantee everyone's going to be doing that. That's a kind of the idea. And so his teacher, like Arno's teacher, had several other students that have also done similar, not making courses, but also taken that, you know, that style of classical Chinese medicine. Heine's one of those people, so he doesn't practice exactly the same thing, but it's also classical Chinese medicine, because they both had that same teacher. So he's one of the writers on that book that you mentioned. Someone said, hey, Mojo, I back Chinese medicine in the UK who work with infertility. Now I'm 31. Oh, awesome. Wow. I don't think the videos helped you get pregnant. That's awesome. Oh, that's so great. Congratulations. Wow. And also in the COVID time. Wow. Not that it's not hard to get pregnant in the COVID time, but I guess it's stressful now with all the things that are going on, especially, mate, in the UK. You guys have got, you know, all sorts of stuff happening there. Yeah, that's great. That's great news. Awesome. Okay, so you said, great. Thanks so much for sharing the memorization. Yes, it does. Of course it does. But what I'm getting at is you can get away with not memorizing as much with standard TCM. And the other difference is, and this is what really made me kind of stick with it after I started maybe so I did the first weekend with Arno in Sydney, I think it was about 2016 or something like that. And after that weekend, I went home and I was like, I'm never doing TCM ever again. Like that's what was in my mind, right? Now I did have to keep doing it because I didn't know enough classical Chinese medicine to just that week just change all my patients over to these formulas. Now classical Chinese medicine is contained within TCM, so you've already learned it, you're already doing it in a way, but you're not exclusively doing it, right? And so the problem with TCM and herbs is there's so much. It's impossible. Like I've taught it at uni. It's not just the formulas, but there's so many modifications because, okay, that one formula, say like example, Xiao Chai Hu Tang, right? That's a classical formula. And that's been used by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of not just practitioners, but practitioners who've then formed sort of lineages and styles. And so they might have had their 2 herb combo to kind of add to that. And that's been included in a book somewhere. And then other practitioners had their 2 herb or their 3 herb combo to add to that. And then a good deviation that you can see from that was a formula called Xiao Ya San, which is like, Xiao Chai Hu Tang's kind of, it's like saying we'll use Xiao Chai Hu Tang and we'll use a blood tonic formula kind of together, right? And that's what Xiao Ya San's doing. So I'm not sure, banana chocolate shout out. I'm just going to call you banana shout out. If you've already studied herbs, but would be a common formula. Like if you've ever looked at herbs ever, Xiao Ya San, or ever been given herbs, that's probably what's been given to you. It's a very common formula. For sure, definitely. I'm not saying don't memorize, but when you're studying herbs, it's overwhelming and it's bamboozling, and you just think, how can I make sense of it? Like that's very, it's it's very overwhelming when you're an undergraduate student studying herbs. But then when I looked back, when I started doing classical herbs, and I was thinking, right, I've got to memorize all this stuff more. Like, I've really got to commit this to memory. Even though I'd been practicing all those years, I hadn't memorized as much as like other students. I'm not a big, I just didn't memorize as much as other students I know, right? And then I look back on the TCM now with that perspective and think, it just no wonder students struggle, because it just doesn't make as much sense. And the other thing is, there's just so many more herbs. So Chinese medicine has about 400 herbs. We'll probably finish up real soon. I won't be babbling on for too long, but there's about 400 herbs in Chinese medicine, right? In the Materia Medica and the normal pharmacopoeia. And within classical Chinese medicine, we don't use all those herbs. So we're only using, you very commonly, like every day, use about 50 herbs. And then there'd be another herbs. Like that cupboard behind me that you can see there is just full of herbs that are not used from my old TCM days. And I'm not sure what to do with them because I don't use them anymore. So like basically my shelves of herbs halved when I started doing classical Chinese medicine. So what that means is, if you're using less herbs, you get to know those herbs a lot better. And so then that makes the studying and the memorization easier. And the other thing is, within the way Arno has his system, is he kind of thinks about the herbs in a 5-element way, which for me, that just makes heaps more sense. And it made it very easy to learn them, because to me, it kind of seems more visual. So I can kind of visualize what the herbs are doing in that way of classifying them. TCM classifies herbs in terms of like wind heat, wind cold, clearing damp, this kind of thing. Whereas and that's something that's unique to Arno's system, is like he thinks of them as like, they're part of they're wood herbs, or fire, metal, and then you've got like inner circle of those and outer circle. So really core wood herbs, like that's what their main function is. So if you really understand the 5 elements and you think, I know what wood does, then you can understand that herb. It's like Wage is a good example. That's a wood herb, but it's so it's like the main wood herb. It's the wood of the wood, but it's also in TCM. It's a pungent herb, so you can understand how those two things kind of layer up or correlate together. But I mean, definitely don't stop memorizing. Memorization is really important, and it doesn't let you down. Like, you need it in Chinese medicine, and they're the practitioners who tend to be really good in the end of it. Like, yeah, everyone can look up apps, and it's good to have apps to remind you and to help you, and it's good to have books and things like that. But there's some things where if you just memorize it, like, it comes back to help you later on rather than coming back to haunt you. Anyway, this has been lovely. It's been great to have some questions and some banter back and forward. I will try to do these more regularly now that I've worked out how to do it. I'm assuming the audio is okay. I'll listen back and see what it's like. But now I've got my little setup here in my office. I can do this anytime I have a little bit of a chance to do this. Oh, thanks for this mini crash course. It's not a course. Yeah, look, there's definitely room for deepening it. I don't know how much people want to be deepened. Are they really interested in that? Maybe. I think I'll make a video soon about what are the main differences. I know I've done one, but I probably didn't cover it adequately enough, I don't think. What are the differences in TCM to classical Chinese medicine? That's a big one. You get a petition sign. You don't need to do that. It's something that I'm really passionate about now, I think, because I found when I started doing classical Chinese medicine, I was at the point of almost like thinking, I could take it or leave it, Chinese medicine. Like, I've always loved it, and I probably never would let it go, but I wasn't dedicated to studying it, let's just say that. I was probably like, if I had some spare time, I wasn't thinking, let me memorize some formulas, let me get better at it. And part of it is also, when you're studying something, you're around other people that are like-minded. And what I loved about Arno's course is that you're connecting to hundreds of people all over the world. Like, he's got an online group that you can just connect with people that are doing that, and that keeps you sharp. And then if you're going to a course regularly rather than just being on your own, it's like having mentors or people that are not checking up on you, like, or some of them do. Some of the people in it are really like, like there's one guy that, he's like, let's play the herbs game, see how many herbs you've memorized. Well, after a few wines, you probably can't remember what you've memorized and what you haven't. But that keeps you sharp, right? And that keeps you doing it. Yeah. Someone said I need help with my hair fall. Someone's retracted their message. That's okay. I do that too. I need help with hair fall. My hair is dry, brittle and frizzy. I could do with some help with that as well. Someone told me recently on a different, not on this channel, but something else. They were like, oh, your hair's all wispy, wispy and dry. You should do something about it. I was like, thanks. Sometimes I just put it up like this because I don't have time to do it. But yeah, at the start of this video, I was talking about dryness versus dampness, because someone mentioned that, is there a thing called dryness? And dryness in hair is often to do with blood, but it can also be to do with yang, like yang rising. So that same mechanism that happens when you get, well, what can happen with hair is you've had a lot of stress or shock, and the yang floats up and it gets, your head gets too hot. Now, you won't physically feel it like, oh, my head's hot, but it does get too hot and then the hair falls out. Now, that's the falling out of the hair. But why is that happening? Probably because that person might be already deficient. So they could be blood deficient. And in that case, then there's not enough moisture. Same as what I was talking about at the start of this video. I don't know when you've jumped on, and so that's fine. But that wasn't more talking about your bowels, but it's the same mechanism of like, there's not moisture to moisten, right? So it's not just necessarily, oh, I've got to drink more water and my hair will get all moist. I mean, obviously hair is different because of sometimes like physical things can be, like the products you use on your hair. If you dye, my hair's like this because I dye it all the time, and I've done that ever since I can remember. Like I'm not a true redhead. And so that can damage your hair over time, right? So the idea of getting sick or getting illness in your body in Chinese medicine is this competition between your body and the environment. So if you're constantly bombarding your body, your hair body, with your hair environment with toxic chemicals of hair dye or products or stuff like that, or you have done that, then sometimes no amount of moisture will help that. And then, it's genetics as well. Sometimes people's hair gets drier or frizzier or brittle because of that. But the main thing you'd want to look at is blood, right? So nourishing blood. Now, the best thing I could recommend as a food would be bone broth. So if you haven't done that already, give that a try. Go to an organic butcher. I've got a video on this channel that I made about me making bone broth, because I used to recommend it to people all the time and I'd never made it myself, partly because I'd been a vegetarian for a long time. And cooking up bones was like, the last thing that I could kind of fathom to do in a way. Even though there's not much meat on them, it just seemed yucky to me. The smell and all that kind of stuff. But it's not so bad, and I've done it several times. I'd probably make a bone broth maybe once every month or every 6 weeks. In winter, I'd probably do it once every couple of weeks. Oh, you're a vegetarian. Well, that could be the reason. Not to be horrible, but that could be the reason. So blood nourishing things mostly are meat things. Now, if you ever think that you could stomach anything in terms of bone broth, then maybe that would be something, because there's a lot of collagen in it. That's the thing. That's the main thing that's in it. So food, vegetable wise, things that are, there's a video I made on here about tonifying blood. So things that are purple, red, beetroot, blueberries, blackberries, all those berries. Now they're all full of antioxidants, but they also tonify blood. So that's what you want to think. You want to look up foods that what tonifies blood. Again, the cooked foods. Sometimes vegetarian people eat too many cold foods. Not all of them, but I was a vegetarian for 9 years, and I was quite a healthy vegetarian. Like in Chinese medicine, people would always tell me, "Oh, you're gonna eat meat. You're gonna be." I used to get poked fun of in China by the Chinese doctors saying, "Oh, you're weak. You're going to be weak and feeble if you don't eat meat, right? What's wrong with you?" kind of thing. And I was generally pretty healthy. Like I was never a sicky kind of person. But then one day I just decided I'd eat meat. So I completely understand. Like when I was a vegetarian, I couldn't ever think, no one could ever convince me. And that was a long time, many, many years, you know, to eat meat. So beetroot, anything that's darker coloured, I'm just trying to think what else. Oh, eggplants, they can be good for blood. Purpley foods, red foods. So yeah, they're all good to tonify blood. What else? Roll jelly, that would be the best thing. So if you're not a vegan, go down to the Chinese food shop and get some roll jelly. Roll jelly is, if you don't know what it is, it's like the honey that the bees have. Could therefore be induced by kidney or liver deficiency. My LFT tests low in protein. Yeah, well that's the blood deficiency, right? So blood affects your liver. When you say this kidney liver deficiency, you mean that in Chinese medicine, right? Like, not Western medicine. So kidney deficiency in Chinese medicine is like the idea of thinking, well, your body's just generally deficient. It's like the battery pack is dying or is going low, right? You know, when your iPhone's dying, you're like, I've got to find a charger somewhere. You can't live on that low power forever because that's what kind of then powers things up. You know, it gives the top up kind of power to things. Right, yeah, just checking because sometimes people say the other and they went, I had a liver function test and that confirms that I've got a liver problem in Chinese medicine. So in TCM in Chinese medicine, your liver